As I was told when they handed me this article, that it has Prince Bandar featured in there prominently. You know, our ally, Prince Bandar, the guy who is an honorary CIA member. These are the people that we have allied with. These are the people who created the petrodollar with us. You know, when Nixon and Kissinger took us off the gold standard with Bretton Woods II, they immediately said, well, you know, we got to have something to make the currency valuable. We're not connecting it to gold anymore. The whole world had seen through the fraud. They were printing so much paper, there wasn't any way they had the gold to back it. So they just said, all right, we're going to get rid of that pretense, but we're going to come up with a different idea. We're going to back our currency by having Saudi Arabia denominate oil in American dollars. We're going to work with Saudi Arabia. Of course, they're going to buy our worthless treasury bills, give them value. They're going to buy a lot of our treasury bills. We're going to make them unbelievably rich, and then we will also arm these people, and they will support us by making our fiat currency the world reserve currency. And so we've been working with these Wahhabist killers in Saudi Arabia. We created them, and they are business partners with the CIA, and they didn't want this information to get out in the 9/11 report. But that's what's happening. But let me tell you what the other Wahhabist killers did, because, you know, Saudi Arabia beheads more people than ISIS does in their own country under Sharia law. But let's look at what the Wahhabist killers did in the Bataclan. They say they apparently gouged out eyes. They castrated victims. They shoved their testicles in their mouths. They may have disemboweled some poor souls. Women were stabbed in their genitals. All the torture was, victims told police, filmed for Daesh, or the Islamic State propaganda. For that reason, medics did not release the bodies of torture victims to the families, said investigators. But prosecutors, what did they tell the public and the media? The French government said these were just a rumor. They said, well, you know, we found some sharp knives there, but it was just a rumor. It was shrapnel that caused all these injuries. Now, here's some of the testimony. I want you to hear this, because I want you to understand, if we do not stop Hillary Clinton and John Kerry and this policy of bringing war into the United States by bringing in these jihadi terrorists, and as I said before, you only got 1% of the million that Hillary Clinton wants to bring in just in 4 years. Okay, that's 10,000 of these people. Let's take it down to a tenth of that, okay? Let's say that they're 99.9% vetted, okay? That 99.9% of these people are fine. But we get 1/10 of 1%. That's 1,000 of these people. What did they do? What did they do? I want you to think about this. This is your future. This is the future of you, of your children, of your grandchildren, if you don't stop this. I don't care if they call me a racist xenophobe who is a religious bigot. I want to tell you what these people did and why they need to have extra special permission to come here from certain countries. And I think we need to get out of their countries and stop killing them as well, okay? We need to get some of these people that are in Washington out right now. But here's what these Wahhabists did. Here's a question. This is for the information of the Commission inquiry, they said. Can you tell us, they're talking to one of the investigators, how you learned that there had been acts of barbarism within the Bataclan? Beheadings, eviscerations, eyes gouged out. And the investigator said, well, after the assault, we were with the colleagues at the Passage Saint-Pierre, Amelot, when I saw weeping from one of the colleagues who came outside to vomit. And he told me what he had seen. And he says, acts of torture happened on the second floor. And he said, bodies have not been presented to families because there were beheaded people there. The murdered people, people who had been disemboweled. There were women who had had their genitals stabbed. And he said, all of this would have been videotaped for Daesh? And he says, I believe so. Survivors have said so. Elsewhere, the investigator says, women were sexually tortured, stabbed in their genitals, their eyes were plucked out. People were decapitated. The committee chief pressed the investigator on whether the victims were decapitated or mutilated. He stated the authorities had given out conflicting information that said the victims were merely shot or blown up. The president of the committee replied with this damning statement about one victim's father discovering the gruesome truth in their morgue. Okay, here's your tragedy, folks. This is the tragedy that awaits for you if you simply think that Hillary Clinton's 1 million migrants are helpless people who need to come in here, and it's simply a statistic. This is what the father said when he saw his son in the morgue. On the causes of the death of my son at the Forensic Institute in Paris, I was told, and what a shock it was for me at that moment, that they had cut off his testicles, had put them in his mouth, and he was disemboweled. When I saw him behind the glass, lying on the table, a white shroud covering it up to the neck, a psychologist was with me, and he said, "This is the only presentable part of your son's left profile." I found he had no right eye. I made the remark. I was informed that they had punctured his eye and sliced down the right side of his face, where there was a very large hematoma that we could all see. This is the hatred that has been carefully cultivated by the CIA and our American policy, being brought home to our country without your consent, in spite of the law, without any vetting. This is the policy of Hillary Clinton. This is what is going to happen in America. That's a Heat Street exclusive. Along with other personal stories, the motorcyclist who was crushed to death trying to stop the killer truck, a German journalist who witnessed the Nice attack, said he saw a motorcyclist chasing the killer truck, okay? This is a killer truck. Again, this is AFP. They can't say the Islamic terrorist. It was a killer truck that he was chasing. And tried to enter the cabin but fell and ended up under the wheels. The German journalist said, "I stood on the balcony and suddenly a truck drove through the crowd. Surprisingly, he was driving very slowly, not fast. He drove slowly and he was being chased by a motorcyclist. The cyclist attempted to overtake the truck and even tried to open the driver's door, but he fell and he ended up under the wheels of the truck." And then he said he saw police officers open fire. I tweeted this out last night. And I said, I guess they will be saying that we need to have a ban on fully automatic trucks. They came pretty close, blaming it on the trucks and not Islam. And I also said that when they find this person, they will call him a Frenchman, not a Muslim. And they came pretty close to that as well. They call him now a French Tunisian, except that he's not really a citizen. The first papers that they showed of this guy show that he has a temporary residence, that he's just recently come over from Tunisia. But they will do anything that they can to put this out there, to blame it on the truck, for example. You know, it was back in 2006. This happened very close to my home. We used to live not too far outside of Chapel Hill, North Carolina. The University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, a very, very politically correct liberal institution. I remember right after 2011, when the official story was we've been attacked by Islamic terrorists, their response was to have all incoming freshmen be required to read the Quran. That's UNC Chapel Hill. Now, 5 years later, they had Mohammed Reza Tahiri Azhar, an Iranian American, intentionally, as he later confessed, hit people with a sports utility vehicle on the campus of UNC at Chapel Hill. To avenge, this is what he said, to, quote, avenge the deaths of Muslims worldwide and to punish the United States government. No one was killed in the attack. 9 people were injured, none seriously. So he was incompetent in what he did, unlike this guy yesterday. He turned himself in. He was arrested. He wrote in a letter, "I was aiming to follow in the footsteps of one of my role models, Mohammed Atta, one of the 9/11 hijackers who obtained a doctorate degree," he said. Now, they had a debate, and I remember that when this happened, there was a lot of back and forth because, you know, of course, this is UNC Chapel Hill. This is the liberals. They just cannot bring it on themselves to acknowledge this, even when the guy says this, even when he says he did it because he wants to avenge the deaths of Muslims and he wants to punish Americans. They can't call it an act of terrorism. They had a debate as to whether or not it was an act of terrorism. UNC Chancellor James Moser, I think is his name, stopped short of calling it a full-fledged act of terror. Just can't say it. Just can't say it. It's like Facebook. He's got a block. I can't say that a Muslim did an act of terror even when he said he did. Stay with us. We'll be right back. We're going to look at the French Revolution. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I have one last segment here. I want to talk about what's going on globally, as represented by the French government in the background of Bastille Day. Of course, we have the Drudge Report link to Paul Joseph Watson's article, "Media Blames a Truck and Not Terrorists or Islam for the Nice Attack." I guess maybe we're going to have a no-drive list. And that's what I was saying. I tweeted out, I said, well, they're going to ban fully automatic trucks. And some guy came back at me and he goes, you guys sound like a bunch of ignorant, stupid cavemen. Guns, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I said, well, you realize, of course, that the attack ended when somebody used a gun on him. It was the police, because in a slave country like France, only the police are allowed to defend against something like that. That's why it went for over a mile, because nobody else could fight back effectively. You see that the guy tried to run up there with his motorcycle and stop this, but he couldn't. And so, we look at this and we can't watch the borders, okay? We can't take somebody who has had convictions, criminal convictions, like many of these terrorists, once they're in the city, once they're in the country, we can't deport them. We can't have a first strike, you're out policy. No, we can't vet any of these people. We can't throw them out if they come here and they're criminals. And then when this happens, we have the media covering for it. As Watson points out, we got the headline from CNN, truck rams a crowd, or the New York Times, truck attack on French crowd. CBC News says children killed in Nice as truck attacks a family event. The truck did it. Okay, they want to make it all about the truck. Except, when a car really does kill people, like with a Tesla autopilot, then they blame the people, okay? That's the insanity of this. But before I run out of time, okay, this French president, just hours before this happened, it came out that he spends $11,000 a month on his hair. $11,000 a month. This is USA Today. The socialist leader's personal stylist earned $11,000 a month. Now, per capita income in France is less than $3,500 a month. So he's making 3 times what the workers make. The workers. I thought the socialists cared about the workers, okay? He's got a 5-year contract with his hairstylist. It began in 2012. By 2017, the French president will have shelled out $657,000, because he's worth it. He's worth it. Now, remember Marie Antoinette? That's what they were celebrating, Bastille Day. That was where we're told, the liberty-loving people in France spontaneously rose up against the tyrannical king. This is the way New American puts it. Took out his haughty wife who said, let them eat cake. Now we've got a socialist president who essentially says, let them eat pomade. That's what's going on here. So what they were celebrating yesterday was the fact that they stormed the prison, the Bastille. They took it down. And then, of course, you had a reign of terror, didn't you? They point out here, the French Revolution was not really a liberty-loving thing, but actually the fruit of decades of radical agitation. Sound familiar? Stirred up by anti-Christian, power-seeking secret societies that drank freely from the poison well of the Enlightenment. It has served as a template for every radical leftist revolution since that time. Now it's come full circle, hasn't it? Now we've got the arrogant socialist who is fawning over his hair, spending 3 times per capita income on his hair. And the guy's losing it, like me, okay? I'm not spending that kind of money on my hair. With radical agitation, we see that as well. That's their open borders. With policy from secret societies, they're the people who put this stuff together. And we look at the article. He comes out after this and says, well, France, you're going to have to learn to live with terrorism. No, I think we need to do something about it. They say France is investigating whether a truck attacker acted alone. The point is he didn't act alone. He had the cooperation of Hollande, of Merkel, of the European Union, of Obama, Clinton, John Kerry. They're his associates. They're the people who brought them in, who are bringing them in by the millions. And we don't know how many. Is it 1,000? Is it 10,000? Is it 100,000? Is it just 1 or 2 or a dozen more? Stay with us tonight. InfoWars Nightly News, 7 Central, 8 p.m. Eastern.